Right. So, SpaceX just spent $60 billion to buy a coding tool. Not a rocket, not a satellite network, a text editor that writes code. And the headline everybody repeated was the price. $60 billion for a company doing about $2.6 billion in revenue. That's roughly 23 times sales, one of the richest numbers ever paid for software. Here's the thing. That number is wrong. The $2.6 billion is only Cursor's enterprise slice. It's big company contracts. Its total annualized revenue is closer to $4 billion. So the multiple Reuters actually cites is about 15 times, not 23. But honestly, the multiple isn't even the interesting lie here, because the real question was never whether Cursor is worth $60 billion. It's what SpaceX actually bought. And the answer is not the best coding tool on the market. So let's read the receipts. Here's the whole story in one line. SpaceX didn't buy the best tool. It bought distribution. The tool everyone's comparing Cursor to, Claude Code, isn't even the same kind of software. And on the hard, autonomous work this deal was supposed to be about, the free agent already sitting in your terminal runs on the model layer, winning the very benchmarks $60 billion was meant to buy. By the end, you'll know what $60 billion really bought, why a top investor called Cursor a fading star days later, and which of these two you should actually be using. So, what does $60 billion get you in the middle of 2026? Start with how SpaceX even paid for it. On June 12th, it went public. The biggest IPO in history, its first sale of shares to the public. 4 days later, the stock had run up so hard the company had added something like $740 billion in value. And then it spent a sliver of that, all in stock, not a dollar of cash, to buy Cursor. Fortune put it best. The IPO appreciated by the entire cost of Cursor in a matter of hours of trading. Think about that for a second. The price that broke every record was basically rounding error on 4 days of stock gains. Now, the company SpaceX bought, that's AnySphere, the maker of Cursor, is a rocket of its own. Its revenue went from $100 million to around $4 billion in roughly 18 months. It hit its first $2 billion faster than any business software company in history. So this isn't a story about a dud. But here's what the $60 billion was really chasing. Cursor is used inside 67% of the Fortune 500. Its tools generate something like 150 million lines of company code every single day. That's not a clever editor. That's a distribution channel wired straight into corporate America. And then, the same day the deal was announced, Cursor showed its hand. It unveiled Origin, a brand new GitHub competitor. A GitForge, which is just the platform that hosts your code and your team's changes, the thing GitHub has owned since 2008. Cursor built one designed for AI agents, not humans, and by its own demo numbers, it pushed 22 commits a second and 300,000 clones an hour against one project. So look at the whole stack now. You write the code in Cursor, you review it in Cursor, now you host it in Cursor. And the plan is for the model underneath to come from xAI, which SpaceX also owns. That's the whole game. SpaceX wasn't buying the best tool, it was buying the pipes. So if this is such an obvious win, why did one of the most respected investors in tech look at it days later and call Cursor fading? On June 24th, Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn and one of the most plugged-in venture investors alive, went on the Pioneers of AI podcast and did not hold back. He said Cursor had its bright moment a few months back. Then, his words, it seems to be fading over the horizon. On SpaceX itself, he said, "You're a premium-priced CoreWeave." CoreWeave being the company that just rents out GPUs. His point? Renting compute doesn't make you an AI company. You're buying your way into relevance. Now, one honest caveat, and it matters. Reid Hoffman is not a neutral observer. He's an OpenAI shareholder. He led their first funding round. And his firm, Greylock, is an investor in Anthropic, which makes Claude Code. So when he trashes Elon Musk's coding tool, he's also talking his own book. Fortune flagged it directly. He has a vested interest in every one of these positions. So one conflicted investor's jab can't carry the argument. But here's the thing, he's not alone. Independent analysts have made the colder version of this case for a year. The bear case goes like this. The frontier models are becoming commodities, and Cursor is, at its core, Microsoft's free open-source code editor, VS Code, with AI bolted on top. Critics call it very expensive middleware. And then there's the detail that really stung. When Cursor launched its own in-house model called Composer, it was sold as proof that Cursor had its own technology, its own moat. Then a developer poked at the raw output and found a model identifier buried inside. Kimi K2.5, an open model from a Chinese lab. Cursor's own model was a fine-tune of someone else's. Leadership admitted it. A co-founder said that leaving it out of the announcement was a miss. So the $60 billion winner sits on top of two things it doesn't own. 1. Anthropic's Claude, still the most used model inside Cursor itself. 2. An open Chinese model powering its in-house one. The top comment on Hacker News said it best. This might be the best marketing Claude Code has ever gotten. Which brings us to the comparison everyone actually wants. Cursor versus Claude Code. But to judge that fairly, you have to see one thing first. These two tools are not the same species. So here's where most of the Cursor versus Claude Code takes go wrong. They treat these like two phones. They're not. Take Cursor. It's an editor you drive. You sit inside it, you watch the code, you tab through suggestions. Its signature feature, Tab, predicts your next edit across your files, and it's widely called the best autocomplete in any editor. It's $20 a month for Pro, and most developers genuinely love the flow. You're in the driver's seat. It makes you faster at what you already know how to do. Claude Code is the opposite. It's a terminal agent, no fancy window, just a command line. You don't drive it, you delegate to it. That's what agentic means. You hand the AI a goal, and it acts on its own. You describe what you want, and it reads your codebase, edits across a dozen files, runs the tests, fixes its own failures, and reruns them until they pass, then opens the pull request. It comes with Claude's $20 plan too, though heavy use climbs to the pricier tiers. One developer tested both for 90 days across 12 real production apps. His verdict, in a line I can't beat. Cursor is a smarter editor. Claude Code is an AI teammate. One's an accelerator, the other's a delegator. And that gap is not small. That same developer found a refactor taking about 20 minutes of hands-on editing in Cursor took roughly 3 minutes when he just handed it to Claude Code. Same result. One you do, one gets done for you. So which is better? Honestly, that's the wrong question. Most pros end up using both. But this deal was a bet on the future of autonomous coding. So on that battlefield, the benchmarks do tell a story. Now, you'd expect a clean head-to-head here. There isn't one. And that absence is the story. Here's the benchmark everyone points to, swe-bench verified. A test where the AI has to fix real bugs in real open-source projects until the hidden tests pass. Anthropic's top model, the one powering Claude Code, scores 88.6%. It also tops the harder version of that test, ahead of the best from OpenAI and Google. And Cursor's own Composer model? It's not on the board. Cursor doesn't publish a verified score for it at all. When Cursor does show numbers, it runs its own benchmarks and mostly compares Composer to older versions of Claude. Its big headline win over Claude beat a model that was already a generation old by launch day. So the cleanest evidence isn't a leaderboard. It's developers running both on the same job. One engineer gave Claude Code and Cursor the identical app to build. Claude Code finished it in 33,000 tokens. Tokens being the little units that AI bills by, with 0 errors. Cursor used 188,000, more than 5 times as many, and hit bugs along the way. The developer was careful to add, it is not a constant. One test, different models. But nearly every serious comparison lands in the same place. Claude Code wins the autonomous, hand-at-a-goal, multi-file work. Cursor wins the interactive, in the editor flow. And here's the reality check this whole video needs. Because it's easy to watch benchmarks fly by and assume these tools just make everyone faster. But take the most careful study we have from a research group called METR, which measures AI capabilities. It clocked experienced developers at 19% slower with AI help, even while they felt 20% faster. That gap between feeling faster and being faster is the whole point. Now, fair caveat. That test used an older setup, not Claude Code, and the effect shrank on a rerun. But it still lands. A $60 billion price tag is not proof these tools are winning. It's proof someone is betting they will. So, what does all of this actually mean for you, the person who just wants to ship code? Here's the part that's easy to miss in a story about billion-dollar deals. The people living inside these tools are quietly making a different calculation. One senior engineer wrote about his first heavy month on Cursor, $477 in 28 days. And even though a client was paying, he felt the meter ticking in his head, second-guessing every change to save tokens. The real cost, he said, was thinking about tokens instead of code. So he moved his heavy work to Claude Code. His bill dropped to $120. And in his words, "I just worked." And there's a quieter cost too, ownership. One longtime Cursor user, the kind paying hundreds a month in overages, posted a single line after the deal. "I'll be switching away. I have zero interest in Musk's AI. That's the thing 60 billion can't buy." The moment Cursor became a SpaceX and XAI property, a slice of its most loyal users started looking for the exit. Not over features, over who now owns the pipes. So the deal that was supposed to crown a winner mostly revealed how fragile that crown is. The model isn't yours, the editor's a fork, and your users can leave with a single command. So let's pull it together, fast. 1. The price was about 15 times revenue, not 23, and even that was the wrong thing to stare at. 2. SpaceX bought distribution, Cursor inside most of the Fortune 500, plus Origin and XAI's models. Not a verdict that it's the best tool. And 3. Cursor and Claude Code aren't really rivals, they're different jobs. Cursor makes you faster, Claude Code does the work for you. Most pros run both, and on the autonomous stuff, a free terminal agent is punching straight through a $60 billion tool. So here's the takeaway worth sitting with. $60 billion didn't pick the best coding tool. It revealed where the value is actually moving, out of the editor you stare at and into the model and the agent doing the work underneath. Cursor bought the storefront. The thing it's selling still mostly belongs to someone else. If you want to see what that handed-a-goal autonomous workflow actually looks like in practice, the full Claude Code walkthrough is on screen right now. And I'm genuinely curious where you land. Are you team editor, hands on the wheel, or team terminal, delegating the whole job? Drop driver or delegator in the comments. And if this changed how you read that $60 billion headline, hit subscribe. We read the receipts on this stuff every week while it's still news.